So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our discussion on hydrogen markets in motion. We're going to start with Europe, the United States, China, India, and the Middle East, and we're focusing on the global race to scale. So my name is Zoe Bromage, and I'm a partner at the international law firm King & Spalding, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. And as I'm part of the King & Spalding's global hydrogen team, I am fortunate enough to be advising on projects in each of the regions that we're actually going to cover today, and hopefully I can use that experience to take us on somewhat of an ambitious geographical journey in 50 minutes, so no pressure on that for me. But I'm privileged to be joined by panelists who are distinguished experts in their field, and each of whom have unique insights into the global race to scale. So I'm going to do a little introduction for each of our panelists, and when they hear the name, if you could come up and join me on the stage. So our first panelist, Eugene McKenna. Eugene serves as Senior Vice President of Hydrogen and Sustainable Technologies at Johnson Matthey, a global leader in sustainable technology solutions. Johnson Matthey produces critical components for PEM fuel cells and electrolyzers, as well as catalysts for supporting low-carbon hydrogen, ethanol, ammonia cracking, and sustainable aviation fuel processes. So Eugene is dedicated to advancing innovative, sustainable technologies, particularly hydrogen, and to facilitate the progress towards net zero. And he's going to share his expertise today on the latest global developments in the technology space. We next have Anil, our next panelist. Thank you. If you could come up, Anil. Anil Kumar Taparia. Anil serves as CEO of Green Hydrogen and Ammonia at ACME Group, which is one of India's leading champions of renewable energy. He oversees ACME's global operations spanning Europe, the Middle East, America, and Asia. And with an integrated green ammonia plant operating in Rajasthan since 2021, and additional projects planned in India, Oman, and the United States, Anil is going to share his insights on the requirements for developing successful projects in these regions. Next, we welcome Erwin Penfornis. So Erwin serves as Vice President for Hydrogen Energy World Business Line at Liquide, a leading pioneer in hydrogen development. He's been with Liquide since 2000 and brings over 2 decades of experience to the hydrogen sector, both in Europe and in Asia. He also co-led, or was definitely significantly involved in, the Hydrogen Council, which was established in 2017, which now, as we heard from the panelists earlier today, consists of over 20 countries and 140 investors. And most recently, he contributed to the publication of the Global Hydrogen Compass Report in 2025, and that's got some very valuable insights from the first wave of mature clean hydrogen projects that we've seen, and we're hoping Erwin's going to share some of those insights with us today. And finally, I'm pleased to welcome up onto the stage Ghalib Maamari. Ghalib is the acting CEO of OQ Alternative Energy, a subsidiary of the OQ Group and Oman's national champion for renewable energies and energy transition. Ghalib's mandate includes shaping OQ Alternative Energy's growth strategy, strengthening its role in Oman's vision for 2040 and net zero 2050 objectives, and positioning the company as a global player in the emerging green economy. And he's going to be sharing valuable insights on Oman's significant contributions to the global race to scale. So thank you, everyone. And I'm really excited. I think we've got a great panelist lineup here to speak to this global content. And I think one of the things, just to sort of frame the discussion, we've heard a lot today about where we are in Europe. We've heard about RED III implementation and the challenges with that. We've heard about sort of the missed May deadline. We've also had calls earlier in the policy committee session about calls to relax the RFMBO requirements. But we've also had positive stories about how projects are, mainly in Europe, now achieving certification of RFMBO, and we're seeing investment in Europe. But what we really wanted to do here is just take a step back and see what we can learn from what's going on globally, where the clean hydrogen industry is globally, and how each region is charting its own success, and whether there are any lessons that we can learn and adopt for Europe. And now, given that we've got a lot to focus on and some of the very, very ambitious hydrogen policies in each of the regions, I'm going to jump straight in and first turn our attention to China. So, as we heard earlier today, China now accounts for half of the world's green hydrogen production, and it's got a capacity reaching 125 million tons annually. Looking ahead, we're also seeing in 2050 predictions of China producing outputs of over 33 million tons of clean hydrogen annually. And that's substantially more than the numbers that we're seeing in America, which is 4.7 million tons, and in Europe at 20 million tons. Now, I don't want to get too fixated on the numbers, but I think it's important to have that framework in place when we think about China and where it's achieved so far. And with that, Erwin, I think I'm going to turn to you and just ask, based on your mobility experience in China, what is it that what's China achieved? What's its approach to scaling up hydrogen, and why are we seeing it being so successful currently?
Yes, thank you, Zoe. I think it's interesting because we're just back to back with a previous session, which was about mobility in Europe. There's quite a lot to say about what China has achieved when you realize that they've actually started around 2018 to develop the mobility market. So that's something like 10 years later than what we started doing in Europe or in California. And today in 2025, you've got 30,000 commercial vehicles on the road. You've got 400 stations. And you know the numbers we have today in Europe, and it really raised the question, so how did they achieve this? They've been quite inspired. I think we need to be fair with this, and probably any strategy starts about deciding what you do and what you don't do. From the get-go, they've right away decided to focus on commercial vehicles, probably based on what they were doing on battery already in the previous 5-year plans. They realized that battery would be a very strong solution for passenger vehicles. And so they focused right away on those commercial vehicles, of course having the understanding that the more you'll go into heavy-duty, complex use cases, the more hydrogen would play a role. That has helped them a lot. Then there are different layers, I would say, in their strategy. You should never underestimate how complex and sophisticated is a Chinese strategy. Usually many things start with technology. On technology alone, I think they've had a very pragmatic approach, starting from easy application, I would say. Applications calling for low power requirements. So that was typically light-duty trucks, short buses. I think I recall at that time it was probably fuel cells in the 40 to 60 kilowatt with a hybridation. And progressively, year after year, they've been able to adapt this, raising the bar and moving towards what we see now as a core of their target, which is really 49-ton heavy-duty trucks towards long haul, where it really brings a value compared to a battery, for example. But you see a very staged approach.
Absolutely. And Eugene, I know that you have been heavily involved in the Global Hydrogen Mobility Alliance. So maybe just carrying on from those thoughts about mobility, why are these alliances important, and particularly from a global regional perspective, and sort of just building on what Erwin has said?
So kind of coming to anybody who hasn't been to China to see what's going on there, and from Europe in particular, I could really recommend you go, because it really feels like a test case on how to do strategy and how to do execution. So people have kind of thought about what I want, what do we want, and they want hydrogen to fit into the right place in a decarbonized, secure mobility and energy structure. And so they thought, what we need in order to do that, and what you need in order to do that is to be able to do, learn, and adapt. And they've got that flywheel spinning really, really fast. So if I kind of look at Europe, and the comments from the last panel that we had up here, where comment was that we could have made a great hydrogen car from the participants who are in the room. Seems the case around the room, I'm sure, today for electrolyzers and for fuel cells. And what we're missing in Europe is the learn and adapt. We've got fantastic equipment on the ground, or fantastic ideas, fantastic technology. But one really key thing about this, about what's happening in China, is they're deploying, which means they're gathering huge amounts of information, which means that they're driving down production costs. the technology in many cases is not as good as it is in Europe yet, but they're prepared to do projects and they're prepared to fail and learn from them. And indeed in mobility, we can see mobility working in some parts of the country and not working in other parts of the country. Well, here we'd be crying over the ones that failed. In China, they're cheering because they've worked out the one that works. So I think really clearly Chinese electrolyzer and fuel cell costs are cheaper. Some of that is around EPC costs, it's around construction costs. A lot of that does not transfer to Europe if you move Chinese equipment to Europe. But I think the principal thing that we can see there is if you stand still, if you've got a good idea and you put it on the ground, but you stand still and you don't deploy and you don't get on with it, then people who start behind you will come straight past you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think just sort of focusing on that technology bit for a little bit longer and just staying with you, I think we're seeing that China currently is about 65% of the world's installed and FID electrolyzer capacity. And what we haven't necessarily seen is that sort of expectation that we saw with the PV sector, where we were going to see, there's this ability to reduce the costs and ramp up and really dominate the supply chain. We've not necessarily seen that yet. And you've sort of talked about the quality of the technology that's coming out of China. Are we seeing them compete purely on costs, or are we actually seeing some technology leadership happening? And what are the sort of implications for Europe and our own IP abilities here?
So I think China certainly thinks about cost, as every business should, but I wouldn't think it would be safe for us to imagine that the technology was going to, if it isn't as far ahead as us now, for us to imagine that it wasn't going to catch up very, very quickly would be incorrect because of the do, learn, adapt cycle that they've got going. They're very advanced in alkaline water technology for producing, mainly focused on alkaline water technology because of it's perhaps cheaper to build, which suits with keep the cost cheap at the start. But they're also learning how to use alkaline water electrolyzers, and they're starting to make PEM electrolyzers. Kind of feel it's unlikely they'll export PEM electrolyzers because often they don't like to export things which contain platinum group metals out of the country because they're losing critical raw materials if they do that. And I think as well, we're certainly seeing they've got different standards and different approaches to contingencies and projects whenever they're working in China, which wouldn't apply to us. So costs kind of balance out by the time you move that Chinese technology for alkaline water to Europe, but once again, it will continue to improve, I think, and unless we're deploying technology, we'll be left behind.
But maybe, Zoe, just to add on this, when we're talking about costs going down faster in China, it's not just because there is a usual recipe in China of a cheaper labor cost or whatever. I think they always have this strategy to be able to drive costs down through volumes, through scale. And how? Through pragmatism. They know that you don't activate a market without reaching parity with incumbent solution. So they're going to bring the cost bridge needed there, and then they're going to reduce the constraint to get there. And I think very importantly, with compared to what we discussed before, they're not going to ask for whatever RF and BO hydrogen and so on. They're asking the cheapest hydrogen which is available today. And by the way, that's where they're going to develop the market. And believe it or not, today in China, hydrogen is being retailed between 3 and 4 euro per kilo because they follow this strategy very actively.
Yeah, I mean, we imagine it's cozy in China to be given lots of subsidies, but you start off with subsidies, then they're ruthlessly removed, and it's a bloodbath down to the point where you've got a really, really efficient winner-takes-all winner.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing we just need to think about from the European perspective when we're thinking about technology suppliers, and I've got my legal hat on right now, but one of the things our clients are sort of grappling with when they think about technology suppliers is sort of after-sale servicing. We need to convince lenders for these projects that we're going to be able to maintain this new technology. And there's big questions around after-sale availability in the Western, in sort of Western, when you've got Chinese technology. Obviously, we've got domestic content requirements, which we're seeing increasingly of, and things like the hydrogen bank mandates. And obviously, I would be remiss to not talk about tariffs and potential trade barriers, which are also creating project uncertainty. And in an environment where your project has already got enough challenges and uncertainty, I think this is some other concerns that our clients are facing when talking about technology. And I think that that's another reason why we're seeing perhaps less Chinese electrolyzer uptake in the projects that we're working on.
If I may interject, I think you alluded to something that's really important within Europe itself. It's not necessarily what we actually see in our part of the world, where if I look at a hydrogen project in total, 50% of the the total capex is actually into the renewables, and the Chinese have been really driving the cost really down. In our region, we have seen unprecedented world records of PV, solar PV, or even wind projects, in countries like Oman, Saudi, and UAE. So. And we have also seen, a flavor of also the electrolyzers cost. So I'm a big believer that the Chinese are already dominant in the renewable space, but it's a matter of time for them to also be dominant in the electrolyzer space, be it specifically in alkaline. That's their specialty, and that's an area where they believe they can really drive the cost really down. So while it may be applicable to Europe in the sense that you don't see, because of the stringent requirements of getting Chinese products into the market here, and also the restrictions or the complications when it comes to EPCs, it's not necessarily what we actually see in our part of the world.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great to hear. And I think I just want to round our conversation on China up with a question. And we don't have a sort of an audience Q&A, so I'm going to ask our panelists and also our audience to think about this question and raise your hand, yes or no, which I know is always a challenge when I want just one response without it being qualified. But if we fast forward to 2030, and obviously everything that we've spoken about, do we think that China is still going to be the dominant player in investments in clean hydrogen? Yes. Please raise your hands now. Okay. I don't know that I need to ask for no, but anyone, no? Does anyone want to put their hands up? Okay. Well, I think that kind of summarizes that question nicely for me. So now I want to move ahead to sort of take a step back from China and move over to India. And we had a really interesting keynote speech this morning. And I think what's really interesting is how India itself has been moving forwards. Sorry, my iPad has just died. One moment. There we go. Sorry, I want to make sure that I answer this. I'll address this really in the right way. So, Anil, ACME has pioneered green ammonia projects in India. You've got ambitions to export to both Europe and Japan. How do you see India positioning itself? And are you focused on the domestic market, or is building an export market a key priority for India?
Yeah, thank you. I think if you see any country which is giving that competition to the China is India, not because of competition on technology, but because of competition on the volume, economy of scale, the technology available within India, and the technical expertise which is available in India. As far as ACME is concerned, I think we are building one of the first project which is offtake, having a third-party offtake by an European company, and the project is fully RFNBO compliant. So coming back to the India prospectus for ACME, or from India perspective with respect to the green hydrogen and ammonia perspective, I think we have learned this art that unless you produce the economy of scale, and you have to make it sustainable and affordable, then only this business or this new energy alternative will really pick up. We were talking for this for last 4 and 5 years. There are various constraints, as my colleague mentioned. But if you see the southeastern countries like Japan, Korea, or India, we believe in the low carbon hydrogen and low carbon fuels, rather than having various constraints of additionality or so on. So what we have done in India, we have abstracted the maximum benefit of putting up our renewable energy, which constitute around 50% of the cost, in an area where we have the abundance of and the renewable energy sources. And our process plant, which is ammonia and hydrogen, we are putting up in a logistically good place where we can have the logistic to Indian market as well as the abroad market. And we have the full water available and the technical and the other skill available. So we are trying to optimize on both the facets of this green alternate energy, not having the application of various constraints. We are trying to avoid that. And you see in the recent tender, as one of our government officials have mentioned in the today morning, that we are almost touching less than $700 a ton. So
I think I saw the weighted average is 640, right? So I think we need to probably take a moment just to acknowledge that, because that is a lot lower than we're seeing. And I think a lot of European developers will be very surprised by the fact that you're able to have projects that are offering prices at $640 per ton of renewable ammonia. Now, obviously, that is for the domestic market, and obviously those projects have benefited from things like the site scheme. We also know that India has sort of waived interstate transmission connection costs. We've seen open access priority being given to these projects, and we've seen demand aggregation and also power banking, which obviously has able to reduce the costs and allow these projects to be very, very competitive. Do you think that that is something that, so is that indication that it's possible from these policies to de-risk these projects? And can we sort of expect to see a similar price on exported products into Europe?
I think we have already started offering to the European market as well as the Southeastern market a good price with respect to the available prices of green hydrogen and ammonia. A lot of government support is there for Indian companies to produce a good bankable projects. We are also not afraid of getting the technology from Europe, from China. So there is no restriction or constraint in getting the good technology available elsewhere and then putting up the Indian eyes with respect to the technology or innovations and the local component. So all putting together, I think we are creating a good market for export. And if you see, there are some challenges with respect to the RFNBO requirement, but some of our projects which are put into those locations where we can have some optimization and where we can meet the RFNBO compliant, that is also we are offering to the European market.
Thank you. And Ghalib, I want to come to you now. From an Omani perspective, how do you sort of consider India's ambitions and sort of in terms of volume specifically, and do you think of them as a key competitor for sort of the supply into Europe?
Simple answer is no, but no. So I really want to commend India's, efforts, be it the government, but also the private sector, for taking really bold steps in embracing green hydrogen. To start with, they have one of a very clear, national commercial framework supported by the, long-term offtake auction, and which we saw the results. If my memory serves me right, I think the lowest that was recorded in terms of really offtake number was around 580, so it's even below 600. So this is something that we, I think we should all acknowledge and really commend India for really making it happen. And it's something that we also from, in Oman would like to learn from. We've already had a session with our Indian counterpart, something to be followed up on as well in terms of really learning how can we really adopt something similar in terms of the subsidy schemes that is offered both on the supply but also on the demand side. Do I see India as a competitor? No, for multiple reasons. One, I think, when it comes to green hydrogen, even with what India has really achieved domestically, it's just a drop in the ocean, let alone, the global market there. I think India's efforts so far have been also really focused on the domestic market, not necessarily the global market, which is something that Oman is also trying to adopt. We are also trying to kickstart the industry, green hydrogen industry, by following a similar path, not in terms of producing ammonia for fertilizers, but really trying to feed in green hydrogen to the steel industry for the production of a DRI or semi-finished product that will hopefully be exported later on to Europe. So Oman's ambitions also, if assume success, Oman's ambition is to produce 1 million ton of green ammonia or green hydrogen by 2030. Again, that is a small percentage of what the global demand is. So I don't think we will be competing. Rather, we as a developer, we love to see projects come on stream, green hydrogen projects come on stream, because that gives confidence to investors, it gives confidence to lenders. It's bankability of these projects also get improved. So in a nutshell, not necessarily, I actually, would love for other projects, be it in India or also elsewhere, to really kick off.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's probably what we all say in this room, the more projects, the better, really. But obviously, sort of OQ Alternative Energy, you've been identified as the national developer for green hydrogen for Oman. When we're talking about export markets and we're talking about the RFNBO rules in particular, so what are the challenges that presents to you in sort of developing these projects and creating something that you can de-risk and find a market for?
Sorry to bore the audience, but you'll probably hear this for 100 times. But I think consistency of, if I am to rank the challenges, the biggest challenge that we face as developers, and specifically in Oman, is consistency of regulations. We would love for it's so obvious that all of these projects are actually driven by demand. Yeah? And it's not a commodity that you will actually produce that anyone can actually buy. You actually produce it to cater to the need of your customer. And if that customer happens to be a European customer, then that product has to be RFNBO compliant. Now, what we really like to do is for the whole world, and specifically for the EU, is to establish a level playing field for all of the developers, be it in Oman, be it in India, whatever that regulation is going to be, but we need it to be consistent. And we need also long-term visibility in terms of, is this likely to change? And if it's going to change, is it really material? Because you're actually talking about huge investments that developers will have to incur. We're talking about billions here. It's not a small amount of money. So consistency is really important. The second point is I think it's also important for the policymakers to really shift focus from supply side to the demand side. How can we really incentivize the industry to basically uptake green hydrogen through different means? Our minister this morning spoke about the concept of having an aggregator, in EU, for example, and that will really, really help. If you look at the demand pockets today within Europe, I think the industry is really willing to consider small amounts of green hydrogen in their processes. However, if I look at the development side or on the developer side, it is very difficult for us to cater to the demand of a small industry within Europe. So having that aggregator will certainly help the bankability of our projects, but also ease the offtake constraints that we are actually facing today, which is one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you. And I feel I probably need to give the floor back to you, Anil, just to see when we were talking about competition. is it more of a collaboration? I know ACME is actually investing in Oman as well. So do you see it more as a collaboration? And as we said, sort of the more investments, the more projects, the better it is for the industry, or is there a little bit of competition there?
I think it's a better of collaboration, because our first project is we are putting it in Oman. So the two countries enjoy very good collaboration and cooperation. And the biggest advantage to putting up the project in Oman is the solar radiation, which is excellent for the green hydrogen production. And the policies of the government is very, very supportive for RFNBO compliance and exporting to the European market. And they are having abundant land where we can put up our plants, and they have a coastal line. So all these things are supporting the projects very well in Oman, and we have big plans.
So in many ways, it's a kind of live experiment, isn't it? Because they're both countries with plenty of sunshine, plenty of experience of building petrochemical plants and moving energy and chemicals around the world. So basically, whoever gets the legislation right and the regulation right will have the opportunity to win market. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't a little bit of competition.
The only thing is that you don't know if the first mover has an advantage or a disadvantage, you know? So I think time will tell.
Strategic race as well then.
Erwin, any final sort of thoughts about you from sort of, I know obviously Liquide is investing in the Middle East as well. Any sort of thoughts from you about that, and what are you looking for when you're investing in these countries?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about Middle East, naturally we tend to think export, which is where you went. On our side, we will be careful if we see a project which is only driven by export. Export means heavy infrastructure. Until you've got an export terminal, an import terminal, sometimes special ships, a backbone on the receiving side. You have many years, a lot of uncertainty that can hit the project. And if you want to de-risk your development cost, we like to see a domestic business component. We are very much established, for example, in Saudi Arabia, in basins like Yanbu, on the Red Sea or Jubail. And we believe that there is a potential in those industrial basins to also initiate some low carbon hydrogen business, whether it is in steel making, as you said, chemical sector, could be maritime fuels, heavy duty trucking as a next step. And there you start really hedging your bets on timeline, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Now I'd like to pause for a few minutes on the panel discussion to invite Mr. Ghalib Nageib, CEO of Hydrogen Egypt, to join us on stage and to give us a few remarks. We've given you 2 minutes, so I know that's a tall order, and I'm apologizing in advance. Please come up to the lectern. So I know you're keen to celebrate, to sort of share with us your insights on recent developments, and particularly focusing obviously on Egypt. So
right.
Please.
So thanks for having me. I'm Khalid Nageib, CEO of Hydrogen Egypt, with my co-founder Dalia Samir. So I have 2 minutes. That's 120 seconds. So it's like 10 seconds for 12 subjects, right? So I'll try and make it very fast. First of all, it felt like a little bit of an auction here. I'm not so keen about this, like, let's pat each other on the back and collaborate. I think we should talk about price, okay? So Egypt won the first auction for hydrogen, all right? Let me just throw a few numbers at you. In Egypt, we can produce solar energy at less than 1 cent per kilowatt hour. Can you believe that? Okay, so we have a financial model that can give you $1.6 per kilogram of hydrogen, all right? That's proven. So I think we should get into a little bit more of a competitive state. Why? How? And how does that happen? What was it, Zero Avia, or the airline that won the leaders competition last night? So let's imagine you're on a plane which runs on hydrogen, and you drive and you're on the plane, you're going to Egypt. What do you see? You see a triangle, Alexandria, Port Said, Cairo, that represents 7% of the land of Egypt, okay? The rest is very flat desert, okay? Zero dust, zero humidity, zero wind. It's perfect renewable energy. Also, on the Red Sea. We have the best wind in the world. We have plenty of areas with more than 10 meters per second wind speeds. Now, let's look at the delta of Egypt. Alexandria, Port Said, and Cairo, which is the 7% of Egypt. We have 15 refineries, 30 ammonia plants with export terminals ready to export green ammonia to Europe. Okay, we have cement, we have steel. Other than that, so the industry in Egypt started reacting to the demand from Europe. And then everybody started scratching their head and saying, what's this whole hydrogen thing about, you know? So local industry is adopting hydrogen in Egypt, okay? And now I'm talking about very cheap hydrogen. I'm talking about hydrogen less than $1 a kilo, okay? Less than $1 to run what? To run glass, cement, local industries. So there you're not transporting, you're not storing, you're not compressing, you're not doing anything. It's very cheap. And it's a very interesting narrative that you're finally getting a local narrative. So, you know, we reacted to hydrogen because of the demand from Europe. But now, I think the Global South in general needs to come up with their own narrative, our own applications. Something as simple, my last word, we have plenty of old engines running on the road, like we can see in India and other countries like that. You can mix hydrogen with diesel. You can mix hydrogen with CNG. You can mix it with anything, okay? So it's a wide range of applications. You can even cook with it. So the Global South needs to develop its own narrative for hydrogen. We reacted because of the demand from Europe, but it's time for us also to have our own narrative. Thank you very much.
So there you go. I think there is a little bit of competition creeping in back into the into the discussion. And I think it would be remiss of me, I think we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to have to do this very quickly, but it would be remiss of me not to talk about America in the context of the global race to scale. Obviously, in 2022, America made headlines with the Inflation Reduction Act and the availability of production tax credits, which were up to $3 per kilo for clean hydrogen projects. Obviously, there has been a slight change in policy, just to understate that a little, but we are seeing that those production credits are still available. You just need to come online 5 years earlier, so no pressure. But I think my final question to the panelists would be, if there was something that you could adopt from the US policy on hydrogen, maybe pre or post the big, beautiful bill, because I think obviously there's been some negative implications from that. What would you adopt for Europe going forwards?
I'd take the hubs, although many of them crashed now, but it was a great idea before the policy change, and they're working in the UK.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Neil?
Yeah, I think if we have to really see the progress in this direction, then there has to be a clarity in the mind that any industry, any innovation idea comes with a premium, and that premium need the hand-holding for the industry for initial 4-5 years. So if that mindset is there, I think you can see within 10 years or 15 years, this industry will surpass all the alternate available fossil fuel energy.
Thank you. Erwin?
Yeah, but I think we're just joking a bit, but the IRA was supposed to be one big, beautiful scheme, a little bit before the new administration. As you said, the pity is that after 4 years of deliberation, the window of investment will be open just for 2 years. So it's a lot for just this at the end, but I think what is powerful is the fact that it was one single system where you put money on the table, you don't wait for the next call of the next year with a new budget to be approved with very long instruction time. It's here. Project developers have the visibility and they can come and do, actually, in this case, big projects.
And from my perspective, even though, I mean, it's unfortunate that it won't last for long, but taking bold steps like the Inflation Reduction Act, this is what Europe needs, something similar, but hopefully with a much longer life.
Thank you. And maybe one more final question just for everyone. Given everything we've discussed today and everything we've heard from the conference so far, if there was one thing that in your view is critical for us to achieve the global race to scale, what would it be?
Start doing things.
Anil?
I think technology is the main challenge, which is really developing fast, but I think another 2-3 years we will see a lot of technological development, and cost can be reduced by various factors, but technology play a very big and important role in that.
Erwin?
I would say, as we saw in the previous panel, market activation strategy. Sector by sector, I think we should never underestimate the work, the crafting that needs to be put into a real strategy, which comes with public support, which comes with the input from industrial players along the full value chain. And we know that the challenge with hydrogen is that it is a long value chain, and you're as strong as your weakest link.
From my last words is clarity and consistency in the framework.
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective and the projects that I'm working on at the moment, for me, it's just legal certainty, regulatory certainty. We have projects that we're working on that are ready to take FID. They have the offtake, they have everything in place, but without that legal certainty so that we can have the certifications and get lenders comfortable, it's very difficult to take FID. So I think for us, legal certainty.
I just want to make a pitch. We have a summit in Egypt, April 1st and 2nd, the heavy industry, hydrogen industry summit in Cairo, April 1st, 1 and 2. Please come.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all of the input, the lively discussion, and I know there's probably still lots more questions for the audience, but obviously feel free to find us after this. Oh, we've got 5 minutes? Oh. Okay. Should we take some questions from the audience, or I don't know? We've got 5 minutes, which I was. Has anybody got any questions for us? I think we've obviously done a very sort of big global sweep of policy and progress around the world and sort of lessons that can be learned for Europe. Do you have any questions for the experts while they're up on stage?
It's a question, not a statement. It's a question, not a statement. I'm not asking you for a conference. But I wanted to ask about the price of hydrogen in India. Is that international? Can that comply would that work in Europe? Or is that just strictly for the Indian market? I have my suspicions, sorry.
So I will answer the two-part. Number one is what is the price of hydrogen in our recent tendering process, which is available on the website. The hydrogen prices were somewhere between $3 to $4 a kg. That is the hydrogen cost for domestic market. Not for European market, because if you are putting that in European market, I think that require the renewable energy cost to in par with that. For which I think the Egypt is a very good destination.
Yes, sorry.
Just to add to what Anil just said, just for your information, our plants are RFNBO pre-certified. So I think that answers your question.
Egypt won the first auction.
Thank you. I think we've got a great debate going on down the front.
This is healthy competition.
I was going to say, this is the competition aspect that we were talking about. I think we want to get back to the collaboration side. I think I have a question at the back of the room. Thank you.
Okay. Maren Preuss from Admin, so we do hydrogen certification, the software for that. And therefore I was curious, Zoe, when you were saying legal certainty is missing, I'm surprised because, as you said, there's RFNBO, there's RFBO pre-certification, but there are also certified units. So where do you see the legal unclarities that still hinder your projects?
Yeah, so I'm thinking particularly about one of the projects that I'm working on at the moment, and one of the challenges that we face is making sure that that project fully complies. And obviously we know about the RFNBO requirements that we've spoken about, but also one of the challenges is around whether the renewables have received any financial incentives. And I think that there's a big interpretation question around that. So for example, if the project is located in a tax-free zone, and you've got the renewables there, and you've also got the electrolyzer there, does that mean that that project has benefited from government incentives? And does that mean that it then can't comply with the RFNBO requirements? Now, logically, that doesn't seem to be where we should be, but the problem is that we don't have the clarity and the confirmation on that. So we're getting feedback from the certification bodies that they aren't necessarily able to make a decision on that. And then we have lenders on the other side saying, well, if we're going to finance this project, it's dependent on RFNBO achieving that price. And if we find, financial close will come before we get the pre-certification, but we don't have the actual certification. So if we have the actual certification after the fact, and we've lent to this project, and it turns out that that actually does mean that we don't comply with RFNBO rules, then what does that mean for the project? Similarly, some of the projects receive lower financing, so some concessional financing. That's got a lower interest rate. That's not a commercial interest rate. Again, does that mean that you're not complying with RFNBO requirements? So these are the things that we're grappling with and we're trying to get guidance on so that we can take FID on these export projects.
I think just to add to your question, one of our project is RFNBO compliant, and the inspection was done by TUV, and this is a pre-certified RFNBO product meeting all the RFNBO requirement what you said. So there are agencies, there are a couple of certification agencies who are certifying the projects.
Yeah.
With seeing all the project report, right from technical to places where it is and various raw material, various utilities, and the financing. Keeping in mind, they give it RFNBO compliance.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions in the audience? I'm not sure I'm going to come back to you.
Talk about Chinese electrolyzer.
Okay, can I pass the mic or? Okay, so I think we've run out of time. I'm really sorry about that, but feel free to come and have that conversation with us after the panel. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate all of the lively debate.